There's a lot going on in the scriptures that I shared this morning. And one of my favorite stories is in there, the story of the woman with the hemorrhage, the story of the raising of Jairus' daughter. And I think Luke tells them better, so we're going to wait till the year of Luke, and then I'll talk about them. Because we got two call stories to talk about, and call stories kind of hit close to home right now. A week ago Friday was the culmination of my answering a call and my ordination on May 29th, 1994. 32 years. And I remember being called. Wasn't quite as straightforward as Matthew's "come and follow me" from Jesus. Probably a little bit more like Abram's God calling from wherever. But calls change our lives. We often say that just about phone calls. You'll get a phone call, although it depends on your age whether you answer the phone anymore, apparently. But we'll get phone calls, and when we're done, we may say, "That just changed my life. Something has happened. Something we were called about." Well, that's what happens in call stories when God's involved. We're called to change, called to go in a new direction, called to follow. And those calls aren't always easy. Think about it. Abram, who we know better as Abraham, and his wife Sarai, or Sarah, have to pack up everything and leave. Now, in case you didn't catch it, he was 75 at the time. Some of you understand what I'm about to say. He had to pack up everything and move at 75. Now, you may think, well, I did that. I packed up the house and whatever. No. They lived in tents. They had flocks. They had to move everything, and each night on their journey set it all back up again. It wasn't put it in the moving truck and take it wherever. It was a big undertaking to take everyone and everything associated with your household and go. The best part is, Abram had no idea where he was going. God said, "Come, I'll show you." There was no GPS, but even if there was, he didn't know his destination, so he couldn't have put it in. He turns to his wife and says, "Honey, we're going to go on a journey and find a new home." "Where are we going?" "I don't know." "When will we get there?" "I don't know." "And who's going to do the packing?" "Oh, that I know." It wasn't like it is now. It was a grand undertaking, and at that time, calls from God were not really known. The idea that Abram was following this call from some, for the most part, unknown God was just craziness. Probably to Sarah, probably to everybody else. But he insisted, and they went. God promised to make a great nation, in fact, every nation, from Abram, if he followed. And all of the world's great religions, all of the big religions, trace themselves back to Abram. For God was faithful. But when Abram and Sarai were getting ready to leave, they had no idea what things would look like. But they went, trusting in God to guide them. And then there's Matthew, a tax collector. That's right, he worked for the Canada Revenue Agency. Tax collectors were kind of vilified back then, even worse than we do now when we talk about the CRA at times. Nobody wanted to hang out with them. You may remember a man named Zacchaeus. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with. Tax collector. Tax collectors made their own living off the backs of those from whom they collected the taxes. And some of them were really, really good at it. So people didn't really care for tax collectors because they were skimming off the top, and it costs you money. It was bad enough you had to pay to roam, let alone line the pockets of the tax collector too. So people didn't care for tax collectors. Why on earth would Jesus call one to be one of his disciples? Who was going to listen to this guy? But he did it. And more importantly, Matthew followed the call. He got up, left his job behind, and followed. Wouldn't you like to do that someday? Just get up and walk out, have somewhere else to go? Matthew went and he followed Jesus for the rest of Jesus' ministry. And then he had a ministry of his own after that. But immediately, the authorities started to say, why on earth would Jesus do these things? Eating with those people. Jesus reminded them that he was asking those to follow him who needed to know God's love. Needed to know that they were loved and they mattered. 2 calls, both leading to a ministry of some kind. Both not quite sure what was going to happen when they accepted the call. Oh, I know how that feels. The age of 16, the Welsh war bride wife of my minister said, "You're going to be a minister someday." And I went, "Yeah, no. Don't mean to be rude, don't know you very well, but you're nuts." Literally danced in my ordination, that lady did. But it planted a seed, and eventually things in my life happened, and I went, okay, I get the point, I'll try. And I went to school. First night, met the man I was going to marry. Okay, this isn't so bad. Within a little bit of time, probably 6 to 10 weeks of classes and things, I went, I'm really enjoying this. I think this is the right thing. And then the interviews begin. Tell us about your call. Well, I didn't have a call like Abram. I didn't have a call like Matthew. Many of you remember Paul on the road to Damascus didn't have one of those either. My call consisted more of, I want to do this. No, the door closed. I want to do this. No, the door closed. I want to do that. Okay, God, I want to do what you want me to do. Doors are wide open. And off I went. We've been joking, many of us in our coffee group, we clergy get together once a week, about all the things they didn't teach you in seminary. There's a very long list now. We went to school for 3 years to learn all the things we needed to know to deal with you people. And they didn't tell us most of what we need to know to deal with you people. They told me how to read the Bible and how to, figure out a sermon. And they taught me how to run meetings and read the manual, which here at Kingsview you really don't care about anyway. Terry and I have many a conversation about that. They taught me how to plan a worship service. They taught me how to plan some Sunday school stuff. They sort of taught me what pastoral care was about. And then they let me loose. In my first summer, I went out and I kind of shadowed another minister, and for 4 months I interacted with people and got to preach once in a while and all of those things. And I came back and went, yep, still want to do this. Had another year of school, went out another summer. And this time I got a place all to myself with an off-site supervisor. And at the end of the summer I went, if this is ministry, I'm out. There'd been some really difficult things and people on that summer. So I went to the committee that I met with regularly, and they said, so, how was it? I'm done. I'm out of here. I don't want to do this anymore. Why? So I just verbal diarrhea. Just all came out. What was going on all summer and how hard it was and everything else. And they went, that's ministry. I went, then no. And they said, well, let's sort out the stuff that was just stuff and the learnings. You take the learnings, we'll deal with the stuff. So that's what we did. And I went back to school. By the end of my third year, I thought I was ready. You know, every time I walk into a new church, I think I'm not ready. Whole new group of people to meet, a whole new way of doing things, expectations you're not sure about on both sides, people. But when you're called, you're called. And I realize now that both Abram, Matthew, all the other disciples, they didn't have a choice. When God calls, you can try to avoid it, but eventually you're going to have to respond. And until you do, your life isn't quite what it could be. And while over the last 32 years, there have been ups and downs in both life and ministry, the call is still there. You're not all called to what I'm called to, but each of you are called to something. You may think you've fulfilled your calling, you've retired from whatever you were doing, and that's probably true. I always had to remind my dad that teaching was a calling if you did it right. And he did. Everything we do is ministry. No matter what your job, no matter what you're doing now in retirement, everything is ministry. And God has called you to it. And even on the hard days, God is there in the midst of it. God is calling you. Follow me, and I will make you a blessing. I can assure you, after 32 years, I know a blessing when I see it. And I see it. And I see it. They don't like to be left out. You are each a blessing. Continue to hear the call. Continue to answer. For you are a blessing to all God's children. Amen.